87% of people will die with their dreams still inside them. Not because they lack talent, not because they didn't have time, but because they kept waiting for tomorrow. And tomorrow never came. Right now, as these words enter your ears, you're making a choice. You just don't know it yet. In the next 60 seconds, you'll either close this and scroll to something easier, proving the pattern that's been stealing your life, or you'll stay. And if you stay, what you're about to hear will make you physically uncomfortable. Good. Discomfort is where change lives. Here's the truth that will haunt you. Every hour you've spent procrastinating wasn't wasted on nothing. It was invested in building a prison made of guilt, missed opportunities, and a growing suspicion that maybe, just maybe, you're not capable of more. You are capable. That's the tragedy. You've known what to do for years. You've had the plans, the apps, the motivation, at least for a few days. And yet here you are, again, listening to another program about productivity, hoping this time will be different. It won't be, unless you understand one thing that nobody has told you. One thing that changes everything. You're not procrastinating because you're lazy. You're not procrastinating because you lack discipline. You're not even procrastinating because of the task. You're procrastinating because your brain is trying to protect you from something. And until you know what that something is, no system will save you. No app will fix you. No amount of willpower will set you free. But once you see it, once you really see it, the game changes forever. You can't unsee what I'm about to show you. And you can't unknow what you're about to learn. This is the only way to stop procrastinating. Let's begin. The lie you've been told. For decades, productivity experts have sold you the same story. They say procrastination is a time management problem. They hand you planners, apps, and systems. They tell you to break tasks into smaller pieces, to set deadlines, to try harder. And you've tried. God, you've tried. You've downloaded the apps. You've written the lists. You've promised yourself that Monday would be different, that this time you'd finally get it together. But here's the truth no one wants to admit. If procrastination were a time management problem, you would have solved it by now. Think about it. You're intelligent. You're capable. You've accomplished difficult things before. So why does this keep happening? The answer lies in a place most productivity advice never touches. Your emotions, the real engine behind delay. Here's what the research actually shows, and this might surprise you. Procrastination is not a time management failure. It's an emotion regulation failure. Let me say that again, because it changes everything. When you procrastinate, you're not avoiding the task. You're avoiding the feeling the task creates. Dr. Tim Pychyl, one of the world's leading researchers on procrastination, spent over 2 decades studying this phenomenon. His conclusion? Procrastination is fundamentally about mood repair. It's about escaping discomfort in the present moment, even when you know it will create greater discomfort later. This is why smart, capable people like you can still struggle with procrastination. It's not about intelligence. It's not about skills. It's about what happens in your nervous system when you face certain tasks. Average performers think procrastination is about laziness. Elite performers know it's about emotional architecture. And that distinction makes all the difference. The emotions that hijack your action. So what exactly are you avoiding? When you look at a task and feel that familiar resistance, that pull toward distraction, there's always an emotion underneath. Always. The most common ones are these. Anxiety. The task feels uncertain. You don't know exactly how to do it, or you're afraid of what might happen if you fail. Your brain reads uncertainty as threat, and threats are meant to be avoided. Boredom. The task feels tedious, repetitive, or unstimulating. Your brain craves novelty and engagement. When a task offers neither, it rebels. It searches for something, anything, more interesting. Frustration. You've tried before and hit walls. The task is associated with struggle, confusion, or past failure. Your brain has learned that this task equals pain. Resentment. You feel forced to do something you didn't choose. Maybe it's your boss's priority, not yours. Maybe it's an obligation that feels unfair. Your resistance is a quiet protest. Self-doubt. Deep down, you're not sure you can do it well. Starting means risking confirmation of your worst fears about yourself. Not starting means you never have to find out. Here's the revelation most people miss. You're not procrastinating because you're weak. You're procrastinating because your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do: protect you from discomfort. The problem is, this protection is outdated. It was designed for physical threats in the wild, not for emails, deadlines, and creative projects. Your brain can't tell the difference between a lion and a difficult conversation with your boss. Both trigger the same avoidance response: the procrastination loop. Now let's look at how this plays out in real time. You wake up knowing you need to work on that project. The moment you think about it, a small wave of anxiety rises in your chest. It's subtle. Maybe you don't even consciously notice it, but your brain notices. And within milliseconds, it starts scanning for escape routes. Something to make that feeling go away. Your phone, social media, a snack. Suddenly you remember you need to clean your desk, or check your email, or do some research before you can really begin. This is the loop: task awareness, negative emotion, avoidance behavior, temporary relief, guilt and shame, more negative emotion, more avoidance. Each time you go around this loop, you strengthen it. Your brain learns that avoidance works. The relief is immediate. The consequences are delayed. And our brains are wired to prioritize now over later. Most people try to break this loop with willpower. They grit their teeth and force themselves to start. Sometimes it works for a while, but willpower is a limited resource. It depletes, and when it does, the loop takes over again. Elite performers don't fight this loop with brute force. They redesign the loop itself. That's what you're going to learn in this program. The two types of procrastinators. Before we go further, you need to understand something about yourself. Not all procrastination is the same, and knowing which type you lean toward will help you apply the right solutions. Type 1, the avoider. Avoiders procrastinate because of fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough. For avoiders, not starting is a protection strategy. If you never really try, you can never really fail. Avoiders often say things like, "I work better under pressure." But the truth is, they've just learned to use deadlines as external forcing functions because they can't generate internal motivation. Type 2, the optimizer. Optimizers procrastinate because of perfectionism. They're waiting for the right moment, the right mood, the right conditions. They believe that if they just think about it a little more, plan a little better, they'll be able to do it perfectly. Optimizers often say things like, "I just need to do more research first." But the research never ends. Because research is safe, execution is risky. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Both types are using procrastination as emotional armor. The avoider uses it to protect against failure. The optimizer uses it to protect against imperfection. And both pay the same price: a life of unrealized potential. Which one sounds more like you? Hold that answer in your mind. We'll come back to it. The hidden cost you're not counting. Now let's talk about what procrastination is actually costing you. Not in abstract terms. In real, concrete ways. Most people only count the obvious costs: the missed deadline, the rushed work, the disappointed boss or client. But there's a deeper cost that compounds silently, day after day. Every time you procrastinate, you make a withdrawal from your self-trust account. You tell yourself you'll do something, and then you don't. You make a promise to yourself, and then you break it. Over time, this erodes something fundamental: your belief in your own word. This is why chronic procrastinators often struggle with confidence. Not because they lack ability, but because they've accumulated hundreds of tiny betrayals against themselves. Think about someone who always keeps their promises to you. You trust them completely. Now think about someone who constantly says they'll do things and then doesn't. Your trust in them erodes. You have the same relationship with yourself. Elite performers understand this. They know that every completed task, no matter how small, is a deposit into their self-trust account. And they protect that account fiercely. Average performers focus on the task. Elite performers focus on the relationship with themselves. The shift that changes everything. So here's where we land. Procrastination is not your enemy. It's a signal. It's information about your emotional state. It's telling you something important about how you relate to the task in front of you. When you learn to read that signal, instead of fighting it or numbing it, everything changes. You stop asking, "Why can't I just do this?" You start asking, What feeling am I trying to avoid right now? That question is the doorway to liberation. Because once you identify the emotion, you can work with it. You can design around it. You can create systems that acknowledge your humanity instead of demanding that you be a productivity robot. This isn't about becoming a different person. It's about understanding the person you already are and building a life that works with your wiring, not against it. What's coming next? In the chapters ahead, you'll learn exactly how to do this. You'll discover how to regulate the specific emotions that trigger your procrastination. You'll expose the cognitive traps, the lies your mind tells you, that keep you stuck. You'll learn the 2-minute protocol that makes starting almost effortless. You'll master prioritization systems that actually work. You'll understand time blindness and how to cure it. And you'll build something most people never achieve, a finisher identity. By the end of this program, procrastination won't be your enemy anymore. It will be a teacher you've learned to understand. But here's what I need you to know before we continue. Everything you learn in this program only works if you apply it. Listening isn't enough. Understanding isn't enough. You have to take action, even tiny action, to rewire the patterns you've built over years. The good news? You've already taken the first step. You're here. You're listening. You've decided that something needs to change. Now, here's the question that will determine everything that follows. What if the problem was never your discipline, but your definition of what procrastination actually is? And what if, armed with the right definition, you could finally break free? Hold that question, because in the next chapter, we're going to go deeper into the emotional architecture of delay. You'll learn the specific mechanics of anxiety, boredom, and resistance, and exactly how to work with each one. The truth you've been missing is closer than you think. Chapter 2. The emotional architecture of delay. You now know the truth. Procrastination isn't about time. It's about emotion. But knowing isn't enough. You've known a lot of things that didn't change your behavior. You knew you should start earlier. You knew you should stop scrolling. You knew the deadline was real. Knowledge without application is just trivia. So in this chapter, we go deeper. We're going to dissect the exact emotions that hijack your action. You'll learn their patterns, their triggers, their weak points, and most importantly, you'll learn how to work with them instead of against them. Because here's what elite performers understand. You cannot outrun your emotions. You cannot suppress them forever. The only way out is through. Let's map the architecture. The 3 emotional saboteurs. When you procrastinate, one of 3 core emotions is almost always running the show. Sometimes 2, occasionally all 3 at once. They are anxiety, boredom, guilt. Each one has a different signature, a different trigger, and a different solution. Most people treat all procrastination the same way. They apply generic advice and wonder why it doesn't stick. But you can't treat anxiety the same way you treat boredom. The medicine for one is poison for the other. Let's examine each one. Saboteur 1, anxiety. Anxiety is the most common driver of procrastination and the most misunderstood. When you feel anxious about a task, your brain interprets it as danger. Not, this might be uncomfortable danger. Actual, physical, survival-level danger. Your amygdala, the ancient threat detection center of your brain, doesn't know the difference between a predator and a performance review. Both trigger the same cascade: cortisol, adrenaline, tunnel vision, and one overwhelming urge: escape. This is why you suddenly need to check your phone. Why you remember urgent emails that aren't urgent. Why cleaning your apartment feels absolutely essential right before a deadline. Your brain is trying to save your life. It's just confused about what the threat actually is. Anxiety-driven procrastination shows up in specific patterns. See if any of these sound familiar. You delay starting because you're not sure how to begin. The task feels ambiguous. There's no clear first step. And ambiguity, to your brain, equals danger. You avoid tasks where the outcome matters. The higher the stakes, the harder it is to start. Because failure isn't just failure. It's confirmation that you're not good enough. You wait for the right mood or the right moment. You tell yourself you'll do it when you feel ready. But readiness never comes. Because readiness is just the absence of anxiety. And the anxiety won't leave until you start. Here's the revelation about anxiety. It lies about timing. Anxiety tells you that you'll feel better later. that tomorrow you'll be more prepared. That waiting will somehow make the task less threatening. But the opposite is true. The longer you wait, the bigger the anxiety grows. It feeds on delay. Every hour you don't start, your brain collects more evidence that this task is dangerous. Why else would you be avoiding it so hard? Average performers wait for anxiety to disappear before starting. Elite performers start before they're ready and watch anxiety shrink. Working with anxiety. So how do you work with anxiety instead of being controlled by it? First, you name it. Out loud if possible. I'm feeling anxious about this task. This sounds simple, but it's neurologically powerful. Research shows that naming an emotion reduces its intensity. It shifts activity from your amygdala to your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that can actually solve problems. Second, you shrink the task. Anxiety expands to fill the size of the task you're imagining. If you're thinking about finishing the entire project, your anxiety will be enormous. If you're thinking about opening the document and writing one sentence, your anxiety shrinks to match. This is the 2-minute principle in action. We'll cover it fully in Chapter 4. But for now, know this: you don't have to do the task. You just have to start it. 2 minutes. That's all. Third, you create clarity. Anxiety thrives on ambiguity. So you kill ambiguity with specificity. Instead of work on the presentation, you write. Open PowerPoint. Create title slide. Write 3 bullet points for slide 2. When the next action is crystal clear, anxiety loses its grip. Saboteur 2. Boredom. Boredom is the silent killer of productivity. It doesn't feel as dramatic as anxiety. There's no racing heart, no sweaty palms, just a slow, gray resistance that makes everything feel like pushing through mud. Your brain is a novelty-seeking machine. It evolved to pay attention to new, changing, stimulating environments. That's how your ancestors survived, by noticing what was different, what moved, what mattered. Modern tasks offer none of that. Spreadsheets don't move. Reports don't change. The same email template you've written 100 times offers zero novelty. And so your brain rebels. It searches for stimulation elsewhere. Social media, news, conversations, anything that offers the dopamine hit that boring tasks deny. Boredom-driven procrastination has its own patterns. You start tasks but can't sustain attention. You open the document, write a few words, then drift. Your mind wanders. You check your phone without even deciding to. You gravitate toward productive procrastination. You do easier, more stimulating tasks instead of the important ones. You answer emails instead of writing the proposal. You organize files instead of making the difficult call. You feel restless and trapped. The task feels like a cage. You're not afraid of it. You're just suffocating inside it. Here's what most people don't understand about boredom. It's not the absence of stimulation. It's the absence of meaning. You can do repetitive tasks for hours if they connect to something you care about. Athletes do boring drills because they connect to victory. Musicians practice scales because they connect to mastery. Boredom isn't about the task. It's about the story you're telling yourself about the task. Working with boredom. How do you work with boredom? First, you reconnect the task to meaning. Before you start, answer this question: why does this actually matter? Not why your boss thinks it matters. Why it matters to you, to your goals, to your identity. Sometimes the answer is simple. This pays my rent so I can pursue what I love. That's enough. Meaning doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be real. Second, you add artificial stimulation. This isn't cheating, it's working with your brain's wiring. Play music. Change your environment. Set a timer and race against it. Turn the task into a game. Your brain doesn't care if the stimulation is legitimate. It just needs enough novelty to stay engaged. Third, you embrace strategic boredom. This sounds counterintuitive, but stay with me. Sometimes you need to make everything else more boring than the task. Close all tabs. Put your phone in another room. Remove every alternative. When the task becomes the most interesting thing available, your brain will engage with it. Not because it's exciting, but because it's all there is. Average performers fight boredom with willpower. Elite performers design environments where focus is the path of least resistance. Saboteur 3. Guilt. Now we reach the most insidious saboteur. Guilt. Guilt is unique because it's recursive. You procrastinate, and then you feel guilty about procrastinating. The guilt makes you feel worse. Feeling worse makes you want to escape. Escaping means more procrastination, which creates more guilt. It's a spiral, and once you're in it, climbing out feels impossible. Guilt tells you that you should be different, that a better person wouldn't struggle like this, that everyone else is doing fine and you're the only one who can't get it together. These are lies, but they feel like truth. Guilt-driven procrastination has its own signature. You avoid thinking about the task entirely, not just doing it, thinking about it. Because every thought brings a wave of shame. You develop blind spots. You forget about deadlines. You're not forgetting. You're protecting yourself. You catastrophize the consequences. In your mind, the task has become so overdue, so messed up, that fixing it seems pointless. Why start now when you've already failed? You experience physical heaviness. Guilt lives in the body. It feels like weight on your chest, exhaustion in your limbs, a fog in your mind that makes everything harder. Here's the truth about guilt that might set you free. Guilt is not useful. There's a myth that guilt motivates, that if you feel bad enough, you'll finally change. But research shows the opposite. Guilt decreases motivation. It increases avoidance. It makes the next attempt less likely, not more. Self-compassion, not guilt, predicts behavior change. Working with guilt. How do you break the guilt spiral? First, you practice radical self-forgiveness. I know this sounds soft, but it's backed by hard science. Dr. Kristen Neff's research shows that self-compassion, treating yourself the way you treat a struggling friend, significantly reduces procrastination. Right now, say this to yourself. I procrastinated. That's human. It doesn't define me. I can start again. Repeat it until you feel something shift. Second, you separate past from future. Guilt anchors you to what you didn't do. But the past is gone. The only moment you can act in is now. The only question that matters is, what's the smallest step I can take right now? Not to fix everything, not to make up for lost time, just one tiny step forward. Third, you reset the scoreboard. Chronic procrastinators carry mental ledgers of all their failures. Every missed deadline, every broken promise. The weight becomes unbearable. Here's your permission. Wipe the slate. Today is day one. Your past procrastination has no power over your next action, unless you let it. Average performers use guilt as motivation and wonder why they stay stuck. Elite performers replace guilt with curiosity. What can I learn from this? The emotional trifecta. Sometimes, these three saboteurs work together. You're anxious about a task, so you avoid it. The avoidance creates guilt. The guilt makes the task feel even bigger, which increases anxiety. Meanwhile, the task itself is boring, which makes it even harder to re-engage. This is why procrastination can feel so impossible to break. You're not fighting one enemy. You're fighting three. But here's the liberating truth. Once you recognize which emotion is driving you, you can apply the right intervention. Anxiety needs shrinking and clarity. Boredom needs meaning and stimulation. Guilt needs compassion and reset. One diagnosis, one treatment, targeted precision instead of desperate flailing. The question that changes everything. Before we move forward, I want you to consider something. What if the emotions you've been running from are actually trying to help you? Anxiety is pointing to what matters. You're only anxious about things that carry weight. Boredom is pointing to disconnection. It's asking you to find meaning. Guilt is pointing to values. You only feel guilty when you've violated something you care about. These emotions aren't your enemies. They're messengers. But there's one more layer we haven't uncovered yet. Beneath the anxiety, beneath the boredom, beneath the guilt, there's something deeper. A pattern of thinking that creates these emotions in the first place. These are your cognitive traps. The lies your mind tells you so convincingly that you mistake them for truth. And until you expose them, they'll keep generating the emotions that keep you stuck. What are these traps? And how do you escape them? That's exactly where we're going next. Chapter 3. Cognitive Traps. The lies your mind tells you. Your emotions don't come from nowhere. They're created, manufactured, built by the stories your mind tells you. Often so quickly, you don't even notice. In the last chapter, you learned about anxiety, boredom, and guilt. The three saboteurs that drive procrastination. But here's what we didn't fully explore. Where do these emotions come from? They come from your thoughts. Specifically, from a set of distorted thinking patterns that run on autopilot. Psychologists call them cognitive distortions. I call them cognitive traps. These traps are invisible. They feel like truth. They masquerade as logic, as realism, as just the way things are. But they're lies. Sophisticated, convincing lies that your mind has been telling you for years. Today, we expose them. And once you see them clearly, they lose their power. The nature of cognitive traps. Before we examine specific traps, you need to understand how they work. Your brain processes roughly 11 million bits of information per second, but your conscious mind can only handle about 40. That means 99.9996% of your mental processing happens below your awareness. To manage this impossible gap, your brain uses shortcuts. Mental rules of thumb that simplify decision-making. Most of the time, these shortcuts serve you well. They help you navigate a complex world without burning out. But sometimes, these shortcuts become distortions. They twist reality in ways that create unnecessary suffering. And when it comes to procrastination, certain distortions are devastatingly effective at keeping you stuck. You're about to learn the 5 most dangerous cognitive traps. Each one generates the emotions that fuel delay, and each one can be dismantled once you know how to spot it. Trap 1. All or nothing thinking. This is the perfectionist's prison. All or nothing thinking sees the world in binary. Perfect or failure. Complete or worthless. Success or disaster. There's no middle ground. No spectrum. No room for partial progress. Here's how it sounds in your head. If I can't do this perfectly, there's no point in doing it at all. I only have 30 minutes. That's not enough time to really make progress. I already missed 2 days of my routine. I've ruined everything. Either I finish the whole project today, or I'm a failure. Do you hear it? The absolute language. The elimination of any option between extremes. This trap is particularly vicious because it makes starting nearly impossible. If the only acceptable outcome is perfection, then every beginning carries the risk of catastrophic failure. Your brain, sensing this risk, triggers anxiety. And anxiety, as you now know, triggers avoidance. Here's the truth that shatters this trap. Progress is not binary. Writing 1 paragraph is better than writing 0. Exercising for 10 minutes beats skipping the gym entirely. A mediocre first draft is infinitely more valuable than a perfect draft that doesn't exist. Elite performers embrace what I call the 1% principle. They ask, what's the smallest step that moves me forward? They know that tiny progress compounds. That consistency beats intensity. That done is better than perfect. Average performers wait until they can do it perfectly. Elite performers start before they're ready and improve as they go. Trap 2. Catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is anxiety's favorite tool. It takes a minor worry and inflates it into a disaster movie. It looks at a single negative possibility and treats it as inevitable, permanent, and total. Here's how it sounds. If I mess up this presentation, my boss will lose all respect for me. I'll be passed over for promotion. Eventually, I'll probably get fired. I'll never find another job at this level. Notice the chain. One presentation becomes job loss, becomes career destruction. Each link feels logical in the moment. But step back and you see the absurdity. You've constructed a path from nervous about a presentation to life ruined. Catastrophizing creates paralyzing anxiety because the stakes become impossibly high. When every task carries the weight of your entire future, starting feels terrifying. Here's the revelation. Your worst-case scenario almost never happens. Think back on your life. How many times have you catastrophized about something? And how many times did the actual disaster occur? Research shows that 85% of the things people worry about never happen. And of the 15% that do, 79% of people discover they handled it better than expected, or it taught them something valuable. That means roughly 97% of your catastrophic predictions are wrong. To break this trap, you need to ask different questions. What's actually the most likely outcome? If the worst did happen, could I survive it? What would I tell a friend who was thinking this way? These questions don't eliminate uncertainty, but they right-size it. They bring your fears back to proportion. Trap 3. The perfectionism paradox. Perfectionism is a trap disguised as a virtue. Perfectionists believe their high standards are what make them successful. They wear their perfectionism as a badge of honor. I just care about quality, they say. I refuse to accept mediocrity. But here's what they don't see. Perfectionism doesn't create excellence. It prevents it. The logic seems backwards until you examine it closely. Perfectionists set impossible standards. They can never fully meet those standards. So they either never start or they never finish. They revise endlessly. They delay submission. They feel perpetual dissatisfaction with their work. Meanwhile, people with healthy standards produce work, ship it, get feedback, and improve. They iterate faster. They learn more. And over time, they actually achieve higher quality than perfectionists because they're practicing while perfectionists are paralyzed. Here's how perfectionism sounds. I need to wait until I know exactly what I'm doing. This isn't ready yet. It needs more work. I can't show this to anyone until it's finished. Other people might think this is good enough, but I have higher standards. The perfectionism paradox is this. The pursuit of perfect often prevents good. Dr. Brené Brown's research found that perfectionism is strongly correlated with depression, anxiety, and procrastination. It's not a path to success. It's a defense mechanism against judgment. If you never finish, you can never be criticized. If you never start, you can never fail. To break this trap, you need a new mantra. Progress over perfection. Ship the imperfect draft. Send the good enough email. Publish the version that makes you uncomfortable. You'll survive the judgment. And more importantly, you'll build momentum. Average performers polish in private until the moment passes. Elite performers ship rough and refine in public. Trap 4. Fortune-telling. Fortune-telling is the illusion that you can predict the future with certainty. It sounds like this. There's no point in applying. I won't get the job anyway. They're going to hate my idea. I just know it. This is going to be miserable. I can already tell. I'll definitely fail, so why bother? When you fortune tell, you treat your predictions as facts. You decide outcomes before they happen. And then, here's the insidious part. You act in ways that make your predictions come true. If you know you won't get the job, you don't prepare properly for the interview. You present yourself with less confidence. You hold back your best ideas. And then, when you don't get the job, you think, see, I was right. This is called a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your prediction didn't reveal the future, it created it. The truth is, you cannot predict the future. No one can. Every time you tell yourself, I know what's going to happen, you're lying to yourself. What you can do is influence probabilities. You can prepare. You can try. You can show up fully and let reality unfold. To break this trap, replace fortune-telling with experimentation. Instead of, I know this will fail, try. I wonder what will happen if I try. Instead of predicting, you're exploring. Curiosity defeats certainty. And certainty is just fear in a lab coat. Trap 5. Should statements. Should statements are guilt's primary weapon. They take your desires and turn them into obligations. They transform possibility into pressure. And they load every task with the weight of moral judgment. Listen for these phrases. I should be further along by now. I should have started this weeks ago. I should be more disciplined. I shouldn't struggle with this. Other people don't. Every should is a small act of violence against yourself. It implies that you failed some standard, that you're deficient, that the way you are is not the way you ought to be. Psychologist Albert Ellis called this masturbation, the irrational belief that things must be a certain way. It creates a gap between reality and expectation. And that gap fills with guilt, shame, and self-criticism. Here's the liberating truth. Should is a fiction. There's no universal law that says you should be anywhere other than where you are. There's no cosmic requirement that you should have started earlier. There's only where you are now and what you choose to do next. To break this trap, replace should with could or want to. I should exercise becomes I want to exercise because it makes me feel alive. I should finish this project becomes I could finish this project, and here's why it matters to me. The shift is subtle but profound. It moves you from obligation to choice, from guilt to agency, from external pressure to internal motivation. The master pattern. Now step back and see the larger pattern. All 5 traps share something in common. They distort reality in ways that make action feel impossible or pointless. All or nothing thinking eliminates partial progress. Catastrophizing inflates consequences beyond proportion. Perfectionism demands impossible standards. Fortune-telling predetermines failure. Should statements weaponize guilt? Together, they form an invisible cage. You can't see the bars, but you feel them every time you try to move. Breaking free doesn't require willpower. It requires awareness. Once you see a cognitive trap, you can question it. Once you question it, it weakens. Once it weakens, you can choose a different thought. This is cognitive restructuring, and it's one of the most powerful tools in behavioral science. The practice. Before we close this chapter, I want to give you a practical technique. The next time you feel resistance to a task, pause. Ask yourself, what am I telling myself right now? Write down the thought. Actually write it. Something about seeing your thoughts on paper makes them more examinable. Then ask, is this thought all or nothing? Am I catastrophizing? Am I demanding perfection? Am I predicting the future? Am I should NG myself? Identify the trap. Name it. And then ask the final question. What's a more realistic way to see this? You don't need to force positivity. You just need accuracy. The accurate thought is almost always less extreme, less certain, and less paralyzing than the distorted one. What's next? You now understand the emotional architecture of procrastination. You know the saboteurs. You know the traps. But knowledge isn't transformation. Information isn't liberation. What you need now is a system, a protocol, a step-by-step method that makes starting almost inevitable, regardless of how you feel. In the next chapter, you'll learn exactly that. The 2-minute liberation protocol. A method so simple it almost feels like cheating. But here's the question I want you to hold. What if starting was never the hard part? What if you've just been starting on the wrong thing, at the wrong size, all along? Chapter 4. The 2-minute liberation protocol. You've been solving the wrong problem. For years, you've asked yourself, how do I finish this task? You've obsessed over completion, over the end result, over the mountain you need to climb. But finishing was never your problem. Starting was. Think about it. How many tasks have you abandoned halfway through? Probably very few. Once you're in motion, momentum carries you. Once you've begun, continuing feels natural. The resistance lives at the beginning. The first moment, the initial step. That's where procrastination wins or loses. And here's what changes everything. Starting doesn't have to be hard. You've just been starting wrong. The physics of procrastination. Let's talk about physics for a moment. Newton's first law states that an object at rest stays at rest unless acted upon by an external force. And an object in motion stays in motion unless something stops it. Your psychology works the same way. When you're stopped, starting requires enormous energy. You have to overcome inertia, resistance, fear, and friction all at once. No wonder it feels impossible. But once you're moving, even slightly, continuing becomes almost effortless. The same task that felt insurmountable before you started feels manageable after 30 seconds of engagement. This is why traditional productivity advice fails. It focuses on the mountain when it should focus on the first step. It talks about discipline and willpower when it should talk about physics and momentum. Average performers try to motivate themselves to climb the mountain. Elite performers focus only on taking the first step and let momentum do the rest. The 2-minute rule. Here's the protocol that will change your relationship with starting. It's called the 2-minute rule, and in its simplicity lies its power. The rule is this. When you face a task you're resisting, shrink it down to a version that takes 2 minutes or less. Then do only that. Not the whole task. Not even a significant portion. Just 2 minutes. Want to write a report? Your 2-minute version is, open the document and write 1 sentence. Need to exercise? Your 2-minute version is, put on your workout clothes and stand in the gym. Have to make a difficult phone call. Your 2-minute version is, dial the number and let it ring once. That's it. That's the entire commitment. 2 minutes and you're done. Now here's what actually happens. 90% of the time, you don't stop after 2 minutes. You keep going. Because starting was the only hard part. Once you've opened the document, you might as well write another sentence. Once you're at the gym, you might as well do one set. Once the phone is ringing, you might as well have the conversation. The 2-minute rule is a Trojan horse. It sneaks past your resistance by making the commitment so small that your brain can't object. 2 minutes? That's nothing. I can do that. And by the time your brain realizes what's happening, you're already in motion. Why this works neurologically? This isn't just a psychological trick. There's hard neuroscience behind it. When you face a large, ambiguous task, your brain's threat detection system activates. The amygdala signals danger. Cortisol floods your system. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning and decision-making, gets overwhelmed. This is why big tasks create anxiety. Your brain literally cannot process them without triggering a stress response. But when you shrink the task to 2 minutes, something shifts. The threat disappears. 2 minutes isn't dangerous. 2 minutes isn't overwhelming. 2 minutes is nothing. Your amygdala stands down. Your cortisol levels normalize. And suddenly, your prefrontal cortex can engage with the task clearly. Here's the revelation. The size of the task determines the size of the resistance. Shrink the task, and you shrink the resistance proportionally. A 2-minute task generates almost zero resistance, which means starting requires almost zero willpower. This is how you bypass the willpower problem entirely. You don't need more discipline. You need smaller starts. The microaction framework. Let's take this deeper. A microaction is the smallest possible unit of progress. It's so small that failure is nearly impossible. So small that even on your worst day, in your worst mood, you can still do it. Here are examples of microactions for common tasks. Writing. Open the document. Write one sentence. Just one. Exercise. Put on workout clothes. Do one push-up. Walk to the end of your driveway. Studying. Open the textbook. Read one paragraph. Highlight one sentence. Cleaning. Pick up one item. Wash one dish. Wipe one surface. Email. Open your inbox. Read one message. Reply with one line. Creative work. Sit at your workspace. Make one mark. Write one word. Notice how absurdly small these are. That's intentional. Your brain has been trained to associate these tasks with enormous effort. Every time you've procrastinated, you've reinforced the neural pathway that says, this is hard. The microaction breaks that association. When you consistently start with microactions, you retrain your brain. You build new pathways that say this is easy. And over time, starting becomes automatic. The commitment contract. Here's the critical rule that makes this work. You must honor the 2-minute boundary. If you tell yourself, I'll just do 2 minutes, but secretly plan to do an hour, your brain knows. It senses the deception, and it will resist just as hard as before. The commitment must be genuine. 2 minutes means 2 minutes. If after 2 minutes you want to stop, you stop. No guilt. No judgment. You kept your promise. This builds something essential, trust with yourself. Remember the self-trust account from Chapter 1? Every time you say you'll do something and then do it, you make a deposit. The 2-minute rule lets you make deposits constantly. Small deposits, but frequent. Over time, these deposits compound. Your confidence grows. You start to believe that when you say you'll do something, you actually will. Average performers make big promises and break them. Elite performers make small promises and keep them every single time. The activation energy principle. In chemistry, activation energy is the minimum energy required to start a chemical reaction. Without enough activation energy, nothing happens. The reaction never begins. Your tasks have activation energy too. And for most people, that energy requirement is set way too high. Think about what happens when you try to work on the project. You have to find the files. Open the right applications. Remember where you left off. Figure out what to do next. Make decisions about approach. Each of these steps adds friction. Each one raises the activation energy required. By the time you're actually ready to work, you've spent significant mental resources just getting started. The 2-minute rule lowers activation energy to nearly zero. Instead of work on the project, the task becomes open the project file. That's one action, one decision, almost no friction. Here's how to systematically lower activation energy. Reduce decisions. Decide the night before exactly what your first action will be. Write it down. Make it specific. Open report.docs and add one paragraph to section 3. Reduce friction. Set up your environment so starting is effortless. Leave the document open. Put your running shoes by the bed. Remove every obstacle between you and the first action. Reduce ambiguity. Never start with work on X. Always start with a specific physical action, something you could photograph yourself doing. When activation energy is low enough, starting happens almost automatically. The domino effect. Now let's talk about what happens after you start. Imagine a row of dominoes. The first domino is tiny. Each subsequent domino is slightly larger. By the end of the row, the dominoes are massive. Here's the physics. A domino can knock over another domino up to 1.5 times its size. That means if you start with a domino 2 inches tall, by the 23rd domino you could knock over something the size of the Eiffel Tower. Your tasks work the same way. The 2-minute action is your first domino. It's tiny, insignificant on its own, but it has enough energy to knock over the next action. And that action has enough energy to knock over the next. Open the document, write one sentence, write another, notice you have momentum, write a paragraph, realize you're making progress, keep going, finish the section. Each step makes the next step easier. Momentum builds, resistance fades, and before you know it, you've accomplished something significant, not through willpower, but through physics. The key is starting small enough that the first domino always falls. The implementation protocol. Let me give you a concrete protocol you can use immediately. Step 1. Identify the task you're avoiding. Be specific. Not work on my business, but write the email to the potential client. Step 2. Shrink it to 2 minutes. Ask yourself, what's the tiniest version of starting this task? It should feel almost embarrassingly small. Step 3. Remove one obstacle. What's between you and that 2-minute action right now? Remove it. Close distracting tabs. Put your phone in another room. Open the necessary file. Step 4. Set a timer. 2 minutes. Visible countdown. This creates a container that makes the commitment feel finite and safe. Step 5. Begin and only begin. Do the 2-minute action. Nothing more. When the timer ends, you have permission to stop. Step 6. Notice what happens. Did you want to continue? Did the resistance dissolve once you started? Store this evidence for future reference. Repeat this protocol every time you face resistance. It will never fail you. The permission paradox. There's one more piece to this puzzle. Many people resist the 2-minute rule because it feels like cheating. How can 2 minutes count, they ask. That's not real work. But this objection misses the point entirely. The goal isn't to accomplish everything in 2 minutes. The goal is to break the pattern of not starting, to prove to your brain that beginning is safe, to lower the barriers so completely that avoidance becomes harder than action. Here's the permission you need to hear. Small counts. 2 minutes counts. 1 sentence counts. 1 push-up counts. Not because these are impressive accomplishments, but because they break the cycle. They shift you from inaction to action. They deposit into your self-trust account. And in the long run, that shift matters more than any single accomplishment. What's next? You now have the 2-minute protocol, the tool that makes starting nearly effortless. But there's a question we haven't addressed yet. Starting what? Not all tasks are equal. Some tasks move your life forward dramatically. Others keep you busy while accomplishing nothing. If you apply the 2-minute rule to the wrong tasks, you'll be productive at the wrong things. In the next chapter, you'll learn to prioritize ruthlessly, to identify the one task, the frog, that matters most, and to eat it first, before anything else steals your energy. Here's the question to carry forward. If you could only accomplish one thing tomorrow, which task would make the biggest difference? And what's the 2-minute version of starting it? Your answer might surprise you. Chapter 5. Eat the frog. Prioritization that actually works. You're about to discover an uncomfortable truth. Most of your productivity is fake. You answer emails. You attend meetings. You check items off your list. At the end of the day, you feel exhausted. You've been busy. You've been working. But have you actually moved forward? Here's what elite performers understand that average performers miss. Activity is not accomplishment. Motion is not progress. Busyness is often just sophisticated procrastination. You can spend an entire day being productive at the wrong things. And at the end of that day, you'll be no closer to what actually matters. This chapter is about stopping that pattern forever. The frog principle. Mark Twain once said, "If it's your job to eat a frog, it's best to do it first thing in the morning. And if it's your job to eat two frogs, it's best to eat the biggest one first." Your frog is your most important task, the one that will have the greatest impact on your goals, the one you're most likely to procrastinate on, the one that, if you completed it, would make everything else easier or unnecessary. Everyone has a frog. Every single day. The question is whether you eat it or spend the day avoiding it while pretending to be productive. Most people wake up and immediately check their phone. They scroll through notifications. They respond to emails. They let other people's priorities hijack their morning. By the time they look at their real work, their energy is depleted and their willpower is exhausted. They never eat the frog. They just nibble around the edges of their day. Average performers do easy tasks first to warm up. Elite performers do the hardest, most important task first, when their energy is highest. Why mornings matter? This isn't motivational fluff. There's neuroscience behind it. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for complex thinking, decision-making, and self-control, is freshest in the morning. Every decision you make, every temptation you resist, every task you complete depletes it. This is called decision fatigue, and it's why you have great intentions in the morning and no willpower by evening. If you spend your morning on trivial decisions, what to wear, which email to answer, whether to check social media, you burn cognitive fuel on things that don't matter. When you finally face your frog, you're running on empty. But if you protect your morning and attack your frog first, you bring your full cognitive capacity to your most important work. The decisions you make are sharper. The work you produce is better. And you create momentum that carries through the rest of your day. Here's the revelation. Your morning doesn't belong to the world. It belongs to you. Every notification, every email, every request is someone else trying to put their frog on your plate. Your job is to eat your frog first, before you let anyone else's priorities take over. Identifying your frog. So how do you know which task is your frog? Most people have too many priorities, which means they have no priorities at all. They spread their attention across 10 tasks and wonder why none of them get done. Let me give you a simple framework, the law of 3. Each day, identify the 3 tasks that would make the biggest difference. Not the 10 things on your to-do list. Not the 20 emails waiting for response. Just 3. Then, of those 3, identify the one that matters most. The one that, if completed, would make you feel like the day was a success, even if you did nothing else. That's your frog. Here's how to find it. Ask yourself, if I could only complete one task today, which one would have the greatest positive impact on my life? The answer is rarely the easiest task. It's rarely the most urgent task. It's the task that creates the most value. The one that moves you toward your most important goals. The one you've probably been avoiding. Be honest with yourself. You already know what your frog is. You've known for days, maybe weeks. You've just been pretending other things are more important because they're easier. The 80-20 principle. There's a law that governs productivity, and understanding it will transform how you prioritize. It's called the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule. It states that roughly 80% of results come from 20% of efforts. Look at any area of your life, and you'll see this pattern. 20% of your clients probably generate 80% of your revenue. 20% of your habits probably account for 80% of your health. 20% of your tasks probably create 80% of your progress. The inverse is equally true. 80% of what you do generates only 20% of your results. This means that most of your to-do list is low-value activity. It feels productive. It keeps you busy, but it barely moves the needle. Your frog is always in the 20%. It's the high-leverage task, the one that creates disproportionate results. Average performers treat all tasks as equal and work through their list randomly. Elite performers identify the vital few and ruthlessly ignore the trivial many. The ABC method. Let me give you a practical system for prioritizing every task you face. It's called the ABC method, and it forces clarity on your priorities. Take your to-do list and assign every item a letter. A tasks, must do. Serious consequences if not completed. These are your frogs. B tasks, should do. Mild consequences if not completed. Important but not critical. C tasks, nice to do. No real consequences if not completed. These feel productive but aren't essential. D tasks, delegate. Someone else can or should do these. They don't require your unique abilities. E tasks, eliminate. These shouldn't be done at all. They're time wasters disguised as responsibilities. Here's the rule. Never do a B task when an A task is waiting. Never do a C task when a B task is waiting. This sounds obvious, but watch yourself today. Notice how often you gravitate towards C tasks because they're easier. Notice how you tell yourself you need to clear the small stuff before tackling the important work. That's procrastination wearing a productivity mask. Your tasks, your frogs, must come first. Everything else waits in line. The constraint question. There's one more tool that elite performers use to identify what matters most. Ask yourself, what is the one constraint that, if removed, would accelerate my progress more than anything else? This question comes from the theory of constraints, developed by physicist Eliyahu Goldratt. Every system has a bottleneck, one limiting factor that determines the speed of the entire system. If you improve anything except the bottleneck, you waste effort. But if you improve the bottleneck, everything accelerates. In your life, there's always a constraint, something holding you back more than anything else. Maybe it's a skill you lack. Maybe it's a conversation you're avoiding. Maybe it's a decision you refuse to make. Maybe it's a habit that's draining your energy. Find the constraint. Make removing it your frog. Attack it with everything you have. Here's the truth nobody tells you. You probably know exactly what your constraint is. You've just been pretending it's something else because the real constraint is uncomfortable to face. The daily frog ritual. Let me give you a protocol for eating your frog every single day. The night before you sleep, write down tomorrow's frog. One task. Make it specific. Make it the most important thing you could possibly do. This primes your subconscious. You'll wake up knowing exactly what needs to happen. The morning. Do not check your phone. Do not open email. Do not scroll social media. These activities hand your attention to other people. They let the world decide what matters. Instead, go directly to your frog. Use the 2-minute rule from the previous chapter. Shrink it to a tiny starting action. Begin immediately. Work on your frog for at least 90 minutes before allowing any interruptions. This is your protected time. The world can wait. After the frog. Once your frog is complete, or once you've made significant progress, you can open the floodgates. Check email. Take meetings. Handle the B and C tasks. But here's the key. By then, it doesn't matter. Your most important work is already done. The rest of the day is bonus time. Anything else you accomplish is extra credit. Average performers start their day reactively and squeeze in important work between distractions. Elite performers start their day proactively and let distractions fill the remaining gaps. The clarity trap. There's one objection I hear constantly, but I don't know what's most important. Everything seems urgent. This is rarely true. What's actually happening is that you're avoiding clarity because clarity creates commitment. When you don't know your priorities, you can't fail at them. You can stay busy with whatever feels good in the moment. You can tell yourself you're working hard without confronting whether you're working on the right things. Lack of clarity is a form of procrastination. If you genuinely don't know what matters most, here's what to do. Take a piece of paper. Write down everything you think you should be doing. Every task, every project, every goal. Now cross out everything that isn't truly essential. Be ruthless. Most things that feel urgent are actually optional. From what remains, ask, which of these, if done excellently, would make the biggest difference in my life a year from now? Circle that one. That's your frog. You'll resist this exercise. Your brain will generate objections. But what about this? But what about that? Ignore them. Force yourself to choose. Clarity isn't comfortable, but it's the only path to meaningful progress. The frog test. Here's how you know you've found your real frog. Your frog should scare you slightly, not paralyze you, but create a small flutter of resistance. If a task feels completely easy and comfortable, it's probably not your frog. Your frog should matter. Completing it should move you towards something significant. If a task is urgent but unimportant, it's not your frog. Your frog should be something you'd typically avoid. The tasks we procrastinate most are often the tasks that matter most. Your resistance is a signal pointing toward importance. When you found a task that scares you slightly, matters deeply, and you'd normally avoid, congratulations. That's your frog. Now eat it. What's next? You now have the frameworks for prioritization. The law of three, the 80-20 principle, the ABC method, the constraint question, the daily frog ritual. But there's still an invisible enemy we haven't addressed. Something that sabotages even the best priorities. It's called time blindness. The inability to accurately perceive how long things take, how much time you have, and how quickly the future becomes the present. Time blindness is why deadlines sneak up on you, why you underestimate projects, why you overcommit and underdeliver. In the next chapter, you'll learn to see time clearly, perhaps for the first time. Here's the question to carry forward. What if you've been procrastinating not because you lack discipline, but because you literally cannot see the time you have and how you're spending it? The answer changes everything. Chapter 6, Time Blindness and the Visibility Principle. You have a disability you didn't know about. It's not physical. It's not cognitive in the traditional sense, but it affects everything you do. Every project you underestimate. Every deadline that suddenly arrives. Every morning you wonder where yesterday went. It's called time blindness, and it might be the hidden force behind most of your procrastination. Time blindness isn't laziness. It isn't poor planning. It's a fundamental inability to accurately perceive the passage of time, estimate how long things take, and connect present actions to future consequences. You experience time, but you don't truly see it. And you can't manage what you can't see. The invisible resource. Think about money for a moment. Money is tangible. You can see your bank balance. You can watch it rise and fall. When you spend money, you feel it leave your account. Credit card statements show exactly where your dollars went. This visibility creates awareness, and awareness creates control. Now think about time. Where's your time balance? What does your time statement look like? When you spend an hour scrolling your phone, do you feel that hour leave your account? Of course not. Time is invisible. It flows past you without announcement. Hours vanish silently. Days disappear without exit interviews. Weeks compound into months, and suddenly you're asking, where did this year go? Here's the revelation. You treat time carelessly because you can't see it. If your bank account were invisible, you'd spend recklessly too. You'd have no idea how much you had or where it was going. You'd constantly overdraft without understanding why. That's exactly what happens with time. You're spending an invisible resource and wondering why you're always behind. The planning fallacy. Time blindness shows up most dramatically in how you estimate tasks. Psychologists call it the planning fallacy. It's our systematic tendency to underestimate how long things will take, even when we have direct experience with similar tasks. You've experienced this countless times. The email that was supposed to take 5 minutes becomes 30. The project you scheduled for a week stretches into a month. The quick meeting consumes your entire morning. Here's what's fascinating. You make these errors repeatedly. You know from experience that things take longer than expected. And yet, the next time you estimate, you're just as optimistic, just as wrong. Why? Because you're not estimating based on reality. You're estimating based on an idealized fantasy where everything goes perfectly, there are no interruptions, and you work at peak efficiency continuously. That fantasy never materializes, but you keep planning as if it will. Average performers estimate based on best-case scenarios. Elite performers estimate based on realistic scenarios, then add buffer. The present bias. Time blindness creates another devastating problem, present bias. Present bias is our tendency to overvalue immediate rewards and undervalue future consequences. It's why you choose the snack over the diet, the scroll over the work, the comfort of now over the goals of later. Here's how it works in your brain. When you imagine doing a task in the future, Your brain treats future you as a stranger. Brain imaging studies confirm this. We literally use different neural pathways when thinking about our future selves versus our present selves. So when you say, "I'll do it tomorrow," your brain hears, "That stranger will do it tomorrow." The commitment feels easy because someone else is making it. Someone who isn't fully real to you. Then tomorrow arrives, and suddenly you are that stranger. The task is no longer distant and abstract. It's here, now demanding action. The present self who needs to do the work feels betrayed by the past self who made this commitment. This is why procrastinators consistently overcommit. Each promise is made by a present self who won't have to keep it. The burden is exported to a future self who has no vote in the matter. Making time visible. The solution to time blindness is visibility. You need to make the invisible visible. Let me give you specific strategies that work. Strategy 1. Time blocking. Instead of keeping tasks on a list, put them on a calendar. Give each task a specific time slot with a defined start and end. This forces confrontation with reality. Suddenly you see that you have 8 hours in a workday, not infinite hours. You see that meetings consume 4 of those hours. You see that your quick tasks don't fit in the gaps you imagined. Time blocking makes time tangible. You can see it being allocated. You can see the conflicts. You can see that something has to give. Strategy 2. Time tracking. For 1 week, track exactly how you spend your time. Every 30 minutes, write down what you actually did, not what you plan to do. The results will shock you. You'll discover that you spend far more time on low-value activities than you imagined. You'll see where your time actually goes versus where you think it goes. This is like reading your bank statement after a month of unconscious spending. The awareness alone changes behavior. Strategy 3. Deadline visualization. When you have a deadline, calculate exactly how many working days remain. Not calendar days, working days. Account for weekends, meetings, other obligations. Write this number somewhere visible. Update it daily. Most people think in vague terms. I have a few weeks, or it's due next month. This vagueness enables procrastination. But when you see 7 working days counting down to 6 to 5, the urgency becomes real. Average performers track deadlines in their head and are constantly surprised. Elite performers make deadlines visible and are never caught off guard. The friction principle. Now let's address the other half of the equation, environmental design. Time blindness is worsened by friction. Every obstacle between you and action creates delay. Every extra step required to start adds resistance. And resistance, as you now know, feeds procrastination. Friction is the invisible architecture of your behavior. It determines what you actually do versus what you intend to do. High-friction behaviors are hard to do, even if you want to do them. Low-friction behaviors are easy to do, even if you shouldn't do them. Look at your environment through this lens. Checking social media, low friction. Your phone is in your pocket. One tap and you're scrolling. Starting important work, high friction. You need to open your laptop, find the file, remember where you left off, make decisions about what to do next. The friction imbalance makes procrastination almost inevitable. You've designed an environment that makes distraction effortless and focus difficult. Redesigning friction. The solution is friction engineering. You systematically add friction to harmful behaviors and remove friction from beneficial ones. Here's how to do it. Remove friction from important tasks. Prepare the night before. Set out exactly what you need for your morning frog. Open the document. Position your tools. Reduce decisions to 0. Use implementation intentions. Instead of "I'll work out tomorrow," specify, at 7 a.m., I will put on my running shoes and walk out the front door. The specificity removes the need for decisions in the moment. Create starting rituals, a consistent sequence of actions that leads to work. Coffee, desk, open file, begin. When the ritual is established, starting becomes automatic. Add friction to distractions. Put your phone in another room, not on your desk, not even in the same space. The extra steps required to check it create friction that defeats impulse. Use website blockers. Apps like Freedom or Cold Turkey add friction to time-wasting sites. You can still access them, but not instantly, not effortlessly. Log out of everything. When you have to remember passwords and re-authenticate, the friction interrupts the automatic behavior. Remove notifications entirely. Every ping, every badge, every alert is designed to hijack your attention. Turn them all off. Check on your schedule, not the world's schedule. Here's the revelation. You are not weak. Your environment is poorly designed. When you engineer your environment correctly, the behaviors you want become the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance is the path you'll actually walk. The visibility audit. Let me give you a concrete exercise. Right now, look at your workspace. Answer these questions. Can you see your most important task? Is it visible or buried in a folder somewhere? Can you see your deadline? Is the date displayed or hidden in a calendar app? Can you see your progress? Is there any visual indication of how far you've come? Can you see distractions? Is your phone visible? Are tempting apps open? For each no, you've identified a visibility problem. And visibility problems become procrastination problems. Make your task visible. Post-it notes. Open documents. Physical reminders. Make your deadline visible. Countdown timers. Calendar blocks. Written numbers. Make your progress visible. Checklists. Progress bars. Completed work in view. Make distractions invisible. Phone away. Apps closed. Browser clean. Average performers wonder why they can't focus. Elite performers design environments where focus is the default. The compound effect of visibility. When you combine time visibility with friction engineering, something powerful happens. You stop relying on motivation. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes based on mood, energy, sleep, and 100 other variables you can't control. But environment is stable. Once designed, it stays designed. It works when you're motivated and when you're not. It works on good days and bad days. This is the compound effect. Small environmental changes, maintained over time, produce dramatic results. Each time you remove friction from your frog, you make starting slightly easier. Each time you add friction to distractions, you make derailing slightly harder. These tiny shifts accumulate. After weeks, after months, the cumulative effect is transformative. You become someone who starts important work not because you have superhuman discipline, but because starting is the easiest option available. What's next? You now understand time blindness and how to cure it. You understand friction and how to engineer it. You have tools to make the invisible visible and the difficult easy. But there's a deeper layer still. Something that drives behavior more powerfully than environment or strategy. Identity. You can have all the systems in the world, but if you still see yourself as a procrastinator, if that identity is wired into your self-concept, you'll sabotage every system you build. In the next chapter, you'll learn to construct a new identity. The finisher identity. The person who completes what they start, who keeps promises to themselves, who follows through. Here's the question that will guide us. What if the reason you procrastinate isn't about what you do, but about who you believe you are? The answer might be the key to everything. Chapter 7. Building the finisher identity. Every action you take is a vote for the person you believe you are. This is perhaps the most important sentence in this entire program. Read it again. Let it sink in. Every action you take is a vote for the person you believe you are. When you procrastinate, you're not just delaying a task. You're casting a vote. You're telling yourself, I am someone who doesn't follow through. And with enough votes, that becomes your identity. When you start despite resistance, you cast a different vote. You tell yourself, I am someone who shows up. And with enough of those votes, that becomes your identity too. You've been focused on behavior, on systems, on strategies. All of that matters. But beneath behavior lies something deeper, something that determines whether any system will stick. Your identity. The identity behavior loop. Here's how most people try to change. They focus on outcomes. I want to finish this project. I want to be more productive. I want to stop procrastinating. Then they focus on behaviors. I'll use the 2-minute rule. I'll eat the frog first. I'll block distractions. Sometimes this works. For a while. But eventually, they slip. The old patterns return. And they conclude that they simply lack discipline. What they missed is the deepest layer, identity. Identity shapes behavior automatically. You don't have to convince yourself to act like the person you believe you are. You just do it. It's effortless. It's who you are. A person who identifies as a runner doesn't debate whether to run. Running is what runners do. A person who identifies as a writer doesn't agonize over whether to write. Writing is what writers do. But a person who identifies as a procrastinator, every productive action requires fighting against their self-concept. Every task is a battle against who they believe they are. This is exhausting and unsustainable. Average performers try to change behavior while keeping the same identity. Elite performers change identity first and let behavior follow naturally. The procrastinator identity. Let's examine the identity you might be carrying. Somewhere along the way, you started believing you were a procrastinator. Maybe it began in school. Maybe a teacher said it. Maybe you said it about yourself, half joking. I'm such a procrastinator. Every time you delayed an important task, the belief strengthened. See? I knew it. I always do this. Every missed deadline was evidence. Every last-minute scramble was proof. Over years, this identity solidified. It became part of your story, part of how you introduce yourself, even if only internally. I'm the kind of person who waits until the last minute. Here's what you need to understand. This identity is not true. It's not a fact about who you are. It's a story you've been telling yourself so long that you forgot it was a story. You weren't born a procrastinator. There's no procrastination gene. There's only a pattern of behavior that you repeated until it felt like identity. And anything learned can be unlearned. The finisher identity. Now let's build something new. The finisher identity is simple. It's the belief that you are someone who completes what you start. Someone who keeps promises to themselves. Someone who follows through. Notice I didn't say someone who never procrastinates. That's perfectionism in disguise. The finisher identity isn't about being flawless. It's about having a track record of completion that you can point to and say, this is who I am. The finisher knows they'll face resistance. They know some days will be hard, but they also know, deep down, that when it matters, they deliver. How do you build this identity? One vote at a time. Here's the revelation. Identity change doesn't require dramatic transformation. It requires consistent evidence. You don't become a finisher by completing one massive project. You become a finisher by completing hundreds of tiny commitments. Each completion is a vote. Each vote strengthens the identity. And the identity, once strong enough, drives behavior automatically. The evidence accumulation method. Let me give you a practical system for building the finisher identity. It's called evidence accumulation. And it works like this. Every day, make one small promise to yourself. Something specific. Something achievable. Something you will definitely complete. Not, I'll work on the project. That's vague. Not, I'll finish the entire report. That might be too ambitious. Instead, I will write 200 words before lunch. I will send that one email by 10 a.m. I will review the document for 15 minutes. Small, specific, certain. Then keep the promise. No matter what. When you keep the promise, you've created evidence. Proof that you're someone who follows through. Write it down. Acknowledge it. Today I said I would write 200 words. I wrote 247. I am someone who keeps promises to myself. This might feel silly. It's not. You're reprogramming years of negative evidence with new positive evidence. You're voting for a new identity. Do this daily. After a week, you'll have 7 pieces of evidence. After a month, 30. After a year, 365 moments where you said you would do something and you did it. That's an identity. That's someone who follows through. That's a finisher. Average performers make ambitious promises they can't keep, reinforcing failure identity. Elite performers make small promises they always keep, building success identity. The language of identity. Words matter more than you realize. The way you talk about yourself, both out loud and in your head, shapes your identity. Every self-description is either building the finisher identity or reinforcing the procrastinator identity. Listen to how you currently speak. I'm terrible at deadlines. I always leave things to the last minute. I'm just not a morning person. I can never focus. These statements aren't observations. They're instructions. They tell your brain who you are and how to behave. And your brain, helpful as always, make sure you act consistently with these instructions. Now shift the language. I'm becoming someone who meets deadlines. I'm working on starting earlier. I'm building morning habits. I'm training my focus. Notice the difference. The first set is fixed. The second set is growth-oriented. The first locks you into an identity. The second opens space for a new one. Even more powerful, speak as if the new identity already exists. I'm someone who starts before I'm ready. I finish what I begin. I keep promises to myself. I do the hard thing first. This isn't lying. It's leading. You're speaking from the identity you're building, not the identity you're leaving behind. Here's the truth that changes everything. You become what you repeatedly tell yourself you are. Social proof and identity. You don't build identity in isolation. The people around you shape who you believe you are. If everyone in your circle procrastinates, procrastination feels normal. If everyone complains about deadlines, missing deadlines seems acceptable. But if you surround yourself with finishers, with people who complete what they start, who show up consistently, who take action despite resistance, something shifts. Their behavior becomes your reference point. Their standards become your standards. Their identity rubs off on you. This is social proof in action. We unconsciously adopt the behaviors and identities of our tribe. You don't need to find new friends, but you do need to expose yourself to finisher energy. This might mean books and podcasts by people who embody the finisher identity, online communities focused on productivity and follow-through, mentors or coaches who model consistent action, accountability partners who share your commitment. Even fictional characters can help. When you consume stories about people who persist, who overcome, who finish despite obstacles, you're absorbing their identity patterns. Average performers let their environment shape their identity passively. Elite performers actively curate influences that reinforce who they're becoming. The micro-commitment practice. Here's an advanced technique for rapid identity building. Throughout your day, make micro-commitments. Tiny promises that you fulfill immediately. I will put this cup in the dishwasher right now. Do it. I will respond to this email before I stand up. Do it. I will close these tabs before I start the next task. Do it. These seem trivial. That's the point. Each micro-commitment is a vote for the finisher identity. Each completion is proof that you do what you say. The beauty of micro-commitments is their frequency. You can accumulate dozens of identity votes in a single day, and the cumulative effect is powerful. You're training yourself to close loops, to not leave things hanging, to follow through at the smallest scale. And here's what happens. The small scale bleeds into the large scale. When you're someone who always puts the cup away, always responds to the quick email, always closes the open tabs, you start to believe you're someone who always finishes. That belief becomes self-fulfilling. The identity shield. Once you start building the finisher identity, you'll face tests. Old patterns will resurface. You'll have days where resistance wins. You'll slip, delay, procrastinate. And in those moments, the old identity will whisper, "See, you haven't changed. You're still a procrastinator." This is the critical moment. How you respond determines everything. The old you would agree, would accept the label, would use one failure as proof of permanent identity. I knew I couldn't change. The finisher responds differently. That wasn't who I am. That was a slip. My identity is still intact. I'm still someone who follows through. One moment doesn't define me. My overall pattern defines me. This is the identity shield. The protective belief that your identity is based on your trend, not your exceptions. Everyone slips. Every finisher has moments of procrastination. What makes them finishers isn't perfection. It's what they believe about themselves when they're imperfect. Here's the revelation. Your identity isn't determined by your worst moments. It's determined by what you do after your worst moments. Do you spiral into self-criticism and give up? Or do you acknowledge the slip, recommit, and take the next small action? Finishers choose the second path. Every time. The identity declaration. Before we close this chapter, I want you to do something. Speak these words out loud. Yes, actually out loud. Right now. I am someone who finishes what I start. I keep promises to myself. I take action despite resistance. I am building the finisher identity one vote at a time. How did that feel? Uncomfortable? Good. Discomfort means you're stretching into a new identity. The old self is resisting. Repeat these declarations daily. Morning is best. Before the world fills your head with its priorities, fill it with your identity. At first, it will feel like pretending. That's normal. You're building something new. But with repetition, with evidence accumulation, with micro commitments and kept promises, the feeling shifts. The words start to feel true. And when they feel true, everything changes. What's next? You now understand that identity drives behavior. You have tools to build the finisher identity vote by vote, promise by promise. But identity alone isn't enough. You need fuel. You need the energy of forward motion, the psychological rocket fuel that comes from completion. In the next chapter, you'll learn about momentum, the momentum stack, how small wins create energy for big wins, how completion breeds completion. Here's the question to carry forward. What if the confidence you've been seeking doesn't come before action, but after it? What if you've been waiting to feel ready when readiness only comes from doing? Your answer awaits. Chapter 8. The Momentum Stack. Small wins, big shifts. Something strange happens when you complete a task. Not just relief, not just satisfaction. Something deeper. A shift in energy. A spark that wasn't there before. Psychologists call it the progress principle. But that term doesn't capture what it actually feels like. It feels like fuel. Like someone poured gasoline on a fire you didn't know was burning. This is momentum, and it might be the most underutilized force in human performance. You've been taught that motivation leads to action, that you need to feel ready before you start, that energy precedes effort. It's backwards, completely backwards. Action creates motivation. Starting generates energy. Completion breeds the desire to complete more. This chapter is about harnessing that force deliberately, about stacking wins so strategically that procrastination becomes almost impossible. The progress principle. Harvard professor Teresa Amabile spent years studying what makes people engaged, motivated, and productive at work. Her research team analyzed over 12,000 daily journal entries from professionals across industries. The finding was clear and surprising. The single biggest driver of motivation wasn't recognition, wasn't incentives, wasn't even meaningful work, though that mattered too. It was progress, the simple sense of moving forward, of making headway on something that matters. Even small progress, especially small progress. On days when people reported making progress, even minor progress, they experienced more positive emotions, higher intrinsic motivation, and more favorable perceptions of their work. On days without progress, the opposite occurred. Here's the revelation. You don't need to finish to feel motivated. You just need to advance. This changes everything about how you approach your work. You don't need massive completions to generate energy. You need consistent forward motion. Small steps, visible progress. The feeling that today you move the needle, even slightly. Average performers wait to feel motivated before starting. Elite performers start to generate the motivation they need. The completion high. When you complete a task, any task, your brain releases dopamine. This is the same neurotransmitter associated with pleasure, reward, and desire. But here's what makes it powerful. Dopamine doesn't just make you feel good. It makes you want more. It creates craving for the next reward, the next completion, the next hit. This is why video games are so addictive. They're engineered for constant small completions, level ups, achievements, progress bars. Each one triggers dopamine. Each hit makes you want another. You can engineer your work the same way. When you structure your day around completable units, tasks you can actually finish, you create a dopamine loop. Each completion fuels desire for the next. Motivation becomes self-sustaining. But when you work on massive, ambiguous projects with no clear completion points, you starve yourself of dopamine. There's no reward signal, no sense of progress, just endless effort with no finish line in sight. This is why big projects feel so demotivating. Not because they're hard, but because they're structured to deny you the completion high. The solution isn't to avoid big projects. It's to slice them into completable pieces. The momentum stack. Now let's get tactical. Let me introduce you to the momentum stack. The momentum stack is a deliberate sequence of tasks designed to build energy throughout your day. It starts small. Each win fuels the next. By the time you reach your most important work, You're riding a wave of accumulated momentum. Here's the structure. Layer 1, the activation win. Your first task of the day should be almost impossible to fail. Something so small that resistance can't gain a foothold. Make your bed. Do 5 push-ups. Write 1 sentence in your journal. Drink a glass of water. This isn't about productivity. It's about activation. You're waking up your completion circuitry, proving to yourself that you're someone who does what they intend to do. Layer 2, the bridge win. Your second task should be slightly more challenging. Something that requires a bit more effort, but is still highly achievable. Review your frog for the day. Organize your workspace. Send 1 important message. Complete a small administrative task. This bridges the gap between trivial and significant. It builds on the activation energy and prepares you for real work. Layer 3, the frog. Now you attack your most important task. Your frog, the thing that will make the biggest difference. But notice, you're not starting cold. You've already completed 2 things. You've already proven you can follow through today. The finisher identity is active. Momentum is flowing. Starting the frog feels different when you arrive with energy already built. Layer 4, the sustaining wins. Throughout the day, intersperse smaller completable tasks between larger efforts. After a challenging work block, complete something quick. Clear an email. Make a call. Check off a simple item. These sustaining wins maintain momentum. They prevent the energy from dissipating. They keep the completion high available throughout the day. Average performers tackle tasks randomly, with no momentum strategy. Elite performers sequence tasks deliberately, building energy with each completion. The Zeigarnik effect. There's a psychological phenomenon that works against momentum. It's called the Zeigarnik effect. In 1927, psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik noticed something interesting. Waiters could remember complex orders, but only until the orders were completed. Once delivered, the orders vanished from memory. Her research confirmed, uncompleted tasks occupy mental space. They create cognitive tension. They loop in your mind, demanding attention until they're resolved. This is why open loops are so exhausting. Every unfinished task is a weight you're carrying. Every incomplete project is consuming mental bandwidth. Even when you're not working on them, they're draining you. Here's the revelation. The number of open loops you carry determines your cognitive load. 10 open loops means you're carrying 10 weights. 20 open loops means 20 weights. Each one pulls attention. Each one creates low-grade stress. The momentum stack isn't just about building energy. It's about closing loops. About reducing the cognitive burden that accumulates when things stay open. Every time you complete a task, really complete it, not just make progress, you close a loop. You release the tension. You free up mental space for what matters next. The small win snowball. Let's talk about how small wins compound. When you complete a small task, several things happen simultaneously. You get a dopamine hit, which creates energy for the next task. You build evidence for the finisher identity, which increases confidence. You close a loop, which frees mental bandwidth. You create visible progress, which improves your mood. Each of these effects makes the next task easier to start. And when you start the next task, all 4 effects occur again. The cycle accelerates. This is the snowball effect. Small wins gather size and speed. What started as a tiny ball of snow becomes an unstoppable force. But here's the key. The snowball only works if you keep it rolling. If you complete 3 tasks and then take a 2-hour break, the momentum dissipates. The dopamine fades. The energy scatters. When you return, you're starting cold again. Elite performers protect momentum fiercely. They know that maintaining motion is easier than rebuilding it. They work in focused blocks, stack wins deliberately, and resist interruptions that would break the chain. Breaking the stall pattern. Sometimes momentum stalls. Despite your best efforts, you hit a wall. Energy disappears. Resistance returns. When this happens, most people make a critical error. They try to push through with willpower. They grit their teeth and force themselves to continue the difficult task. This rarely works. And even when it does, it's exhausting. Here's what works better: shrink and complete. When momentum stalls, abandon the current task temporarily. Find the smallest possible completable action in your environment. Something you can finish in under 2 minutes. Answer 1 email. File one document. Clean one surface. Make one decision. The specific task doesn't matter. What matters is completion. You need a quick win to restart the dopamine loop. Once you've completed the small task, your energy shifts. The stall breaks. Now you can return to the larger work with renewed momentum. Think of it like restarting a car. When the engine stalls, you don't push the car to the destination. You restart the engine. Small wins restart your motivational engine. Average performers fight stalls with willpower and burnout. Elite performers restart momentum with strategic small completions. The daily momentum audit. Let me give you a practice for building momentum consciousness. At the end of each day, spend 2 minutes reviewing. What did I complete today? List every task you finished, no matter how small. Acknowledge each one as a vote for the finisher identity. Where did momentum build? Identify moments when completing one task made the next easier. Notice the pattern. Learn from it. Where did momentum stall? Identify moments when you lost energy. What caused it? What could you do differently tomorrow? What will be my activation win tomorrow? Decide tonight what tiny task will start your momentum stack in the morning. This audit takes 2 minutes, but it builds awareness of momentum patterns that will serve you for life. The confidence-competence loop. Here's the final piece of the momentum puzzle. There's a loop that operates beneath the surface. Completion creates confidence. Confidence enables more challenging attempts. More challenging attempts, when successful, build competence. Competence reinforces confidence, and the loop continues. But it also works in reverse. Incompletion erodes confidence. Low confidence leads to smaller attempts. Smaller attempts build less competence. Less competence further erodes confidence. Every day, you're feeding one loop or the other. Small wins feed the positive loop. Each completion, no matter how tiny, adds evidence that you can follow through. That evidence becomes confidence, and confidence enables the next attempt. This is why the momentum stack isn't just a productivity technique. It's a confidence-building machine. It's a system for feeding the loop that lifts you higher instead of the loop that drags you down. Here's the truth nobody tells you. Confidence doesn't precede achievement. It follows it. You become confident by completing things, not by thinking about completing things, not by planning to complete things, by actually finishing. And once confidence builds, everything becomes easier. What's next? You now understand momentum, how it works, how to build it, how to protect it, how to restart it when it stalls. But there's one massive momentum killer we haven't addressed. Something that hijacks your attention dozens of times per day. Something that breaks focus, drains energy, and makes sustained work almost impossible. Technology. In the next chapter, you'll learn to master the digital environment that's been designed, deliberately designed, to steal your attention. You'll build a system that makes distraction difficult and focus natural. Here's the question to consider. What if your phone isn't a tool, but a slot machine engineered to keep you pulling the lever? And what if liberation from procrastination requires liberation from the devices that hijack your brain? The answer changes how you see everything. Chapter 9. Digital Detox and Environmental Design. You're not weak. You're outgunned. Right now, some of the brightest engineers on the planet are working against you. Teams of PhDs in behavioral psychology, neuroscience, and machine learning. Their job? To capture your attention, to keep you scrolling, to make you reach for your phone without even deciding to. And they're very, very good at it. Every notification is designed to trigger dopamine. Every infinite scroll is engineered to eliminate stopping points. Every red badge is calibrated to create urgency. Every algorithm knows what makes you click, what makes you stay, what makes you come back. You're bringing willpower to a technological arms race. And willpower is losing. This isn't a fair fight, but it's a fight you can win if you stop fighting on their terms and start designing your environment on yours. The attention economy. Let's be clear about what's happening. You are the product. Your attention is being sold to advertisers. Every minute you spend on a platform generates revenue for that platform. The longer you stay, the more money they make. This creates a perverse incentive. The companies that own your digital life are financially motivated to make their products as addictive as possible. Not useful, addictive. There's a difference. Useful tools help you accomplish your goals and then get out of the way. Addictive tools hijack your goals and replace them with theirs. Think about the last time you picked up your phone to check one thing. How long were you there? 5 minutes? 20? An hour? You didn't intend to stay that long. Nobody does. But the machine is designed to keep you. Auto-playing videos. Suggested content. Notifications about notifications. Each feature is a hook designed to extend your session. Here's the revelation. Your procrastination isn't a character flaw. It's the intended outcome of billion-dollar systems designed to steal your focus. You're not fighting yourself. You're fighting an industry that profits from your distraction. The true cost. Let's quantify the damage. The average person checks their phone 96 times per day. That's once every 10 minutes during waking hours. Each check takes about 3 minutes to recover from, even if the check itself only lasted seconds. That's nearly 5 hours of fragmented attention every single day. But the real cost isn't time. It's depth. Cal Newport, author and computer scientist, distinguishes between shallow work and deep work. Shallow work is logistical, low value, easily replicated. Deep work is focused, cognitively demanding, and creates real value. Deep work requires sustained attention. 20, 30, 60 minutes of uninterrupted focus. This is where breakthroughs happen, where creative insight emerges, where your most important tasks get completed. But deep work is impossible when you're checking your phone every 10 minutes. The constant interruptions keep you perpetually in the shallows. You feel busy. You're accomplishing nothing of substance. Average performers let technology interrupt them constantly and wonder why they can't focus. Elite performers treat uninterrupted time as sacred and protect it fiercely. The slot machine in your pocket. Your phone operates on the same psychological principles as a slot machine. This isn't metaphor. It's by design. Slot machines use something called variable ratio reinforcement. You pull the lever, and sometimes you win. You don't know when. The unpredictability is what makes it addictive. Your brain keeps pulling because the next pull might be the one. Your phone works identically. You check your email, and sometimes there's something exciting. You open social media, and sometimes there's a notification that matters. You don't know when. So you keep checking. Every time you reach for your phone, you're pulling a lever. And the intermittent rewards keep you pulling. Here's what makes it worse. The phone is always with you. A slot machine at least requires you to go to a casino. Your phone is in your pocket 24 hours a day. The lever is always available. This is why simply deciding to check your phone less doesn't work. You're fighting a reinforcement schedule that's been optimized by machine learning. Willpower doesn't stand a chance. You need a different strategy. Environmental design. The solution is to change your environment so that distraction becomes difficult and focus becomes easy. You've already learned about friction in Chapter 6. Now let's apply it specifically to your digital life. Strategy 1. Physical separation. The most effective intervention is also the simplest. Put your phone in another room. Not on your desk. Not in your pocket. Not face down beside you. In another room entirely. Studies show that even having your phone visible reduces cognitive capacity. Your brain is spending energy monitoring it, anticipating notifications, resisting the urge to check. That energy isn't available for your work. When your phone is in another room, the temptation disappears. The slot machine is out of reach. Your brain can fully engage with the task at hand. This feels extreme. It's not. It's just what focus requires in an age of engineered distraction. Strategy 2. Notification elimination. Go through every app on your phone. For each one, ask, does this app need to interrupt me in real time? For most apps, the answer is no. Email can wait. Social media can definitely wait. News can wait. Even most messages can wait. Turn off notifications for everything except truly urgent communication. Phone calls from family. Messages from your team during work hours. Emergencies only. This single change eliminates dozens of daily attention hijacks. The dopamine hooks lose their power when they can't reach you. Strategy 3. The grayscale trick. Color is a powerful attention trigger. Those bright red notification badges are red for a reason. Red signals urgency, importance, action required. Switch your phone to grayscale mode. Everything becomes black and white. Suddenly, the apps look boring. The badges lose their urgency. The photos aren't as compelling. The entire device becomes less attractive to your brain. This doesn't eliminate the functionality. You can still use your phone when you need it. But the compulsive pull weakens dramatically. Average performers leave their devices optimized for distraction. Elite performers modify their devices to minimize temptation. The digital block system. Let me give you a comprehensive protocol for protecting your focus. Block 1. The morning shield. For the first 60 to 90 minutes of your day, no phone, no email, no internet. This is your protected time, your frog time. Your most cognitively demanding work happens here, while your brain is fresh. Many people check their phone within 3 minutes of waking. They start their day in reactive mode, responding to other people's priorities. By the time they try to focus on their own work, their attention is already scattered. Reverse this. On your morning, let the digital world wait. Block 2. Deep work blocks. Schedule 2 to 3 blocks of 60 to 90 minutes for focused work. During these blocks, phone is away, notifications are off, and your door, physical or virtual, is closed. Treat these blocks as non-negotiable appointments. You wouldn't check your phone during a meeting with your CEO. Give your most important work the same respect. Block 3. Batch processing. Instead of checking email constantly, designate specific times. Maybe twice a day, maybe 3 times, but specific, scheduled times. Same with messages. Same with social media, if you use it at all. Batching consolidates interruptions. Instead of 50 small checks scattered throughout the day, you have 3 larger sessions. The total time might be similar, but the preservation of deep focus is transformative. Block 4. The evening shutdown. Set a hard stop for work-related digital activity. Maybe 7 p.m., maybe 8 p.m. After that time, no email, no work messages, no quickly checking anything. This protects your recovery time. It ensures you actually rest instead of semi-working all evening. And it creates a clear boundary that improves both work and life. The workspace audit. Your digital environment is only part of the equation. Your physical environment matters too. Look at your workspace right now. What does it tell your brain to do? If your phone is visible, your brain is primed for distraction. If your workspace is cluttered, your brain is overwhelmed. If comfortable distractions are nearby, TV, gaming console, comfortable couch, your brain is tempted. But if your workspace contains only what you need for focused work, your task visible, your tools ready, distractions removed, your brain is primed for action. Here's the revelation. Environment shapes behavior more than motivation does. You don't need to become a different person. You need to build an environment where the person you already are naturally does focused work. This might mean a dedicated workspace where only work happens, not the couch where you also watch TV. A specific location that your brain associates with focus. A clean desk with only current project materials visible. Everything else stored out of sight. Noise-canceling headphones or background sound that signals work mode to your brain. Visual cues that remind you of your goals. Your frog written on a sticky note. Your identity statement posted where you can see it. The unplugging practice. Finally, I want to introduce a practice that might seem radical. Once per week, take a full digital Sabbath. 24 hours with no screens. No phone. No computer. No tablet. No TV. This is harder than it sounds. And that difficulty reveals something important. If you can't go 24 hours without your devices, you're more dependent than you realized. The discomfort you feel is the same discomfort an addict feels without their substance. But something happens on the other side of that discomfort. Space opens up. Boredom arrives. And boredom is where creativity lives. You notice things you've been too distracted to see. You think thoughts you've been too busy to think. And when you return to your devices, you return with perspective. You see more clearly how they were controlling you. And you use them more deliberately. Average performers are always connected and call it productivity. Elite performers disconnect strategically and call it clarity. What's next? You now have the tools to reclaim your attention, to design an environment that makes focus natural and distraction difficult, to escape the slot machine that's been stealing your hours. But tools without implementation are worthless. Strategy without action is just entertainment. In the final chapter, you'll receive your 7-day liberation blueprint, a concrete, day-by-day protocol that integrates everything you've learned. The practical path from where you are to who you're becoming. Here's the question that will guide us. What would your life look like if, starting in 7 days, you consistently did what mattered instead of what was easy? The answer isn't hypothetical anymore. It's a blueprint, and it's waiting for you. Chapter 10, Liberation, your 7-day action blueprint. You've made it to the final chapter. Think about where you started. You believed procrastination was about laziness, about lack of discipline, about some fundamental flaw in your character. Now you know the truth. Procrastination is emotional regulation. It's cognitive traps. It's time blindness. It's identity. It's environment. It's momentum, or the lack of it. You've learned frameworks that took researchers decades to develop. The 2-minute rule, the frog principle, the momentum stack, the finisher identity, environmental design, digital liberation. But knowledge isn't transformation. You could listen to this program 10 times and still procrastinate tomorrow if you don't take action. This chapter is about action. Concrete, daily, specific action. Over the next 7 days, you'll implement everything you've learned. Not all at once, not in overwhelming fashion, but systematically, building one layer upon another until the new patterns are wired into your life. This is your liberation blueprint. Before you begin, tonight, before day 1 starts, you need to do 3 things. First, choose your frog. What's the one task you've been avoiding that would make the biggest difference in your life right now? Not someday. Right now. Maybe it's a project at work, a difficult conversation, a creative endeavor you've been planning for months, a health change you keep postponing. Write it down. Be specific. This is the task you'll attack this week. Second, identify your primary saboteur. From Chapter 2, which emotional saboteur hits you hardest? Anxiety, boredom, guilt? Knowing your pattern helps you apply the right intervention. Write down your primary saboteur. Third, declare your identity. Write this statement and put it where you'll see it every morning. I am becoming someone who finishes what they start. Every action I take is a vote for the finisher identity. This primes your subconscious for the week ahead. Now let's begin. Day 1, the foundation. Today is about one thing only, starting small and completing. Morning ritual, 5 minutes. Read your identity statement aloud. Then choose your activation when. The tiny task that starts your momentum. Make your bed. Do 5 push-ups. Write 1 sentence in a journal. Complete it immediately. The frog bite, 15 minutes. You're not going to finish your frog today. You're going to start it. Using the 2-minute rule, shrink your frog to the smallest possible beginning. Open the document. Write the first sentence. Make the first call. Take the first action. Set a timer for 15 minutes. Work on your frog for exactly that long. When the timer ends, stop. You've broken the seal. You've proven that starting is possible. That's enough for day 1. Evening reflection, 2 minutes. Write down one thing you completed today. Acknowledge it as a vote for the finisher identity. Note how starting the frog felt. Was it as hard as you expected? Day 2, the environment. Today, you redesign your environment for focus. Morning ritual, 5 minutes. Identity statement. Activation when. Non-negotiable. Digital detox setup, 20 minutes. Turn off all non-essential notifications on your phone. Every app except calls and urgent messages. Enable grayscale mode. Choose a location outside your workspace where your phone will live during focus time. Install a website blocker on your computer if you don't have one. Block your top 3 distraction sites during work hours. The frog bite, 30 minutes. Today, extend your frog time to 30 minutes. Before you begin, put your phone in its new location. Close all unnecessary tabs. Create the environment for focus. Then work. 30 minutes. Timer on. Evening reflection, 2 minutes. How did the environmental changes affect your focus? What distraction tried to creep in? Write 1 completion from today. Day 3, the cognitive cleanup. Today, you expose the lies your mind tells you. Morning ritual, 5 minutes. Identity statement. Activation when. Trap identification, 10 minutes. Before working on your frog, write down every thought that creates resistance. Don't censor. Just write. This is going to take forever. I don't know where to start. What if it's not good enough? I should have done this weeks ago. Now, identify which trap each thought represents. All or nothing, catastrophizing, perfectionism, fortune-telling, should statements. Write the trap name next to each thought. This creates distance. These aren't facts, they're distortions. The frog bite, 45 minutes. Extend to 45 minutes today. When a cognitive trap appears during your work, name it silently. That's catastrophizing. Then return to the task. Evening reflection, 2 minutes. Which trap appeared most often? How did naming it affect its power? Write your completions. Day 4, the momentum stack. Today, you build deliberate momentum. Morning ritual, 5 minutes. Identity statement. Activation win. Stack design, 5 minutes. Plan your day using the 4-layer momentum stack. Layer 1, activation win. Already done. Layer 2, bridge win. Choose a 10-minute task that's useful but not difficult. Layer 3, frog, your main task. Layer 4, sustaining wins. Identify 3 small tasks to complete between larger efforts. Write this sequence down. You'll follow it exactly. Execute the stack. Complete layer 2 before your frog. Feel the momentum building. Work on your frog for 60 minutes today. When energy dips, complete a sustaining win from layer 4. Notice how the small completion restores momentum. Evening reflection, 2 minutes. How did the deliberate sequencing affect your energy? Did the sustaining wins help maintain flow? Write your completions. You should have several today. Day 5, the identity reinforcement. Today, you strengthen the finisher identity deliberately. Morning ritual, 5 minutes. Identity statement. Add a new element. Recall 3 completions from the past 4 days. Say them aloud. I completed X. I completed Y. I completed Z. I am someone who finishes. Activation win. Micro-commitment practice. Throughout today, make at least 10 micro-commitments. Tiny promises you fulfill immediately. I will file this paper right now. Do it. I will respond to this message before I stand. Do it. I will put this item away before I move on. Do it. Track each one. 10 minimum. The frog bite, 60+ minutes. Continue your frog work. By now, the task should feel less intimidating. The seal is broken. Momentum exists. The cognitive traps are exposed. Push past 60 minutes if flow emerges. But don't force it. Evening reflection, 5 minutes. Count your micro-commitments. List every completion from today. Read them aloud. This is evidence. This is who you're becoming. Day 6, the deep focus day. Today, you experience what protected focus actually feels like. Morning ritual, 5 minutes. Identity statement. Activation win. The 90-minute block. This morning, you'll do something most people never do. 90 minutes of uninterrupted focus on your frog. Phone in another room. Notifications off. Door closed or headphones on. No exceptions. Set a timer. Begin. If you feel the urge to check something, note it and return to work. If your mind wanders, gently redirect. If resistance appears, name the trap and continue. 90 minutes. No breaks. After the block, notice how you feel. Notice the progress you made. Notice that 90 minutes of real focus accomplishes more than most people achieve in a day of distracted work. This is what's possible when you protect your attention. Evening reflection, 5 minutes. What did the 90-minute block teach you about your capacity? How does your frog look now compared to day 1? Write your completions. Day 7, the integration. Today, you integrate everything into a sustainable practice. Morning ritual, 10 minutes. Extended version. Identity statement. Review all your completions from the week. Read them aloud. Feel the weight of evidence you've accumulated. Activation win. Weekly planning, 20 minutes. Plan the coming week using everything you've learned. Identify next week's primary frog. Schedule your morning shield, 60 to 90 minutes of protected focus each day. Block 2 additional deep work sessions. Designate email and message batch times. Plan your digital Sabbath for next weekend. Write your daily activation wins in advance. This isn't rigid scheduling. It's strategic protection of what matters. Frog completion push. Whatever remains of your original frog, attack it today. Use every tool. 2-minute rule to start. Momentum stack to build energy. Environment designed to eliminate distraction. Cognitive trap awareness to disarm resistance. Push toward completion. If you finish, celebrate. If you don't, acknowledge the massive progress you've made. Evening reflection, 10 minutes. This is your final reflection of the blueprint week. Answer these questions in writing. What changed in me this week? What tool made the biggest difference? What's still challenging, and how will I address it? Who am I becoming? The truth about liberation. Here's what nobody tells you about beating procrastination. It's not a one-time victory. There's no final boss to defeat, no finish line to cross, no moment when you're cured and never struggle again. Liberation is a practice, a daily choice, a continuous process of showing up, starting despite resistance, and voting for the identity you're building. Some days will be easy. The momentum will flow. The frog will go down smooth. You'll feel like you've finally figured it out. Other days will be hard. Old patterns will resurface. Resistance will rage. You'll slip. You'll delay. You'll wonder if anything has really changed. Here's what matters: what you do next. The old you would spiral, would use the slip as evidence of permanent failure, would give up on the systems and return to chaos. The new you, the finisher, responds differently. That was a slip, not a relapse, not an identity. A slip. Now I take one small action. Now I vote again for who I'm becoming. Average performers seek perfection and abandon the practice when they fail. Elite performers seek consistency and return to the practice every time they slip. Your liberation begins now. Before I let you go, I want to tell you about someone. Her name was Maria. 3 years ago, Maria was exactly where you might be right now, listening to another self-improvement program, hoping, again, that this time would be different. She was 34 years old, a graphic designer with talent that everyone recognized except herself. She had a folder on her desktop called Someday Projects. Inside that folder were 17 unfinished ideas. A children's book she'd started illustrating 4 years earlier. A portfolio website she'd been about to launch for 2 years. A freelance business plan that was always 1 week away from starting. 17 dreams, all waiting for the right moment. Maria wasn't lazy. Anyone who knew her would tell you that. She worked 50 hours a week at a job that paid her bills but starved her soul. She was responsible, reliable. She showed up for everyone else. But she couldn't show up for herself. Every Sunday night, she'd write the same goal in her journal. This week, I'll work on my portfolio. Every Sunday for 3 years. The journal filled up. The portfolio stayed empty. She tried everything you've probably tried. Productivity apps, morning routines, accountability partners who eventually stopped asking because the answer was always the same. I've been busy. Next week for sure. The guilt was constant. A low hum beneath everything she did. She'd scroll through Instagram and see designers younger than her launching businesses, getting clients, living the creative life she'd been planning since college. And she'd think, what's wrong with me? That question haunted her because she didn't have an answer. She wasn't lazy. She worked harder than most people she knew. She wasn't stupid. She understood exactly what she needed to do. She wasn't even afraid of failure, not really. She just couldn't start. The starting was impossible, and she didn't know why. One night, Maria stumbled across a concept that changed everything. Not a productivity hack, not a new app, an idea. Procrastination isn't a time management problem. It's an emotion regulation problem. She read that sentence 3 times. Something clicked. She wasn't avoiding her portfolio because she was lazy. She was avoiding the feeling the portfolio created. The anxiety of not being good enough. The fear that if she really tried and failed, she'd have to face the possibility that maybe she wasn't as talented as she hoped. The guilt of all those lost years pressing down every time she opened the folder. She wasn't broken. She was protecting herself. That night, Maria didn't try to finish her portfolio. She didn't even try to work on it for an hour. She did something much smaller. She opened the folder. That's it. She just opened it and looked at what was inside. 2 minutes. Then she closed it and went to bed. The next night, she opened one file. The children's book illustration. She looked at the first drawing. She remembered why she'd started it. She closed the file. 2 minutes. The third night, She picked up her stylus, drew one line, one single line on a 3-year-old illustration. Then she stopped. It felt ridiculous. What was one line going to accomplish? But something was shifting. On day 4, she drew for 10 minutes. On day 5, 20. By the end of the second week, she was waking up early to work on the book before her day job. Not because she forced herself, because she wanted to. The resistance had cracked. And through that crack, momentum poured in. 18 months later, Maria published that children's book. It wasn't a bestseller. It didn't make her rich. But it existed. After 4 years in a folder, it was real. Something she could hold in her hands. Something with her name on it. She told me later that the moment she held the printed book, she didn't feel triumph. She felt grief. Grief for all the years she'd lost. All the dreams that had stayed in folders. All the versions of herself that had waited and waited for a moment that almost never came. I didn't need more time, she said. I didn't need more motivation. I needed to understand why I was stuck. And then I needed to take the smallest possible step. That's it. That's everything. Maria now runs her own design studio. The portfolio website, the one that was always 1 week away, has been live for 2 years. She still procrastinates sometimes. She's human, but she no longer believes she's broken. She knows the saboteurs. She sees the traps. And when resistance comes, she knows exactly what to do. She shrinks the task. She starts anyway. She votes for the finisher identity. Day by day, vote by vote. I'm telling you Maria's story because it might be your story. Maybe you have your own folder of someday projects. Maybe you have a dream that's been waiting for years. Maybe you've spent so long wondering what's wrong with you that you've forgotten to ask a different question. Not what's wrong with me, but what's the smallest step I can take right now? That question is the doorway. Maria walked through it. Millions of others have walked through it. And now it's standing open for you. You have everything you need. This isn't flattery. It's fact. Over the past 2 hours, you've gained what most people never learn in a lifetime. You understand the emotional architecture beneath every delay, the anxiety, the boredom, the guilt that drives avoidance. You know the cognitive traps now. All or nothing thinking, catastrophizing, perfectionism, fortune-telling, should statements. You've seen them, named them, and in naming them, weaken them. You have the 2-minute rule, the key that makes starting almost effortless. You have the frog principle to ensure you attack what matters most when your energy is highest. You see time clearly now, perhaps for the first time. The invisibility that allowed procrastination to thrive has been stripped away. You understand identity, how every action is a vote, how the finisher identity isn't born from one dramatic transformation, but built from hundreds of small completions. You know how momentum works, how small wins create energy for bigger wins, how completion breeds the desire to complete more. And you've reclaimed your attention. You see the slot machines now. You know how to design environments that make focus the path of least resistance. You have a 7-day blueprint to integrate all of it. Not theory, practice. Daily actions that rewire your patterns and rebuild your relationship with yourself. This isn't information anymore. This is your life. And tonight, with your frog identified, your saboteur named, your identity statement written, everything changes. The only question remaining is the one I cannot answer for you. Will you take the first step? Not the whole journey. Not the complete transformation. Not the finished project or the launched business or the realized dream. Just the first step. The folder opened. The document created. The single sentence written. The one phone call made. The 2 minutes started. That's all liberation requires. One step, then another, then another. If you take that step tonight, something shifts. Evidence accumulates. The finisher identity strengthens. Tomorrow, you wake up as someone who did what they said they would do. And that person can do it again. Day by day, vote by vote, step by step, until one day you look up and realize you're not waiting anymore. You're not planning to start. You're not hoping this time will be different. You're living the life you kept postponing. Maria thought she needed years to change. She needed 2 minutes. 2 minutes to open a folder. 2 minutes to prove that starting was possible. 2 minutes to cast the first vote for a new identity. Your 2 minutes are waiting. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not when you feel ready. Now. The person who finishes what they start isn't some future version of yourself, living in some imagined tomorrow. That person is you. Here. Now. Liberated.